ReZero Season 3 Episode 13 came out with what is the greatest fight we've ever seen in the anime. It seems like Garfiel has the divine protection of peak fights and peak animation, as he's 2 for 2 now, first with Elsa, now with this. ReZero's shonen MC is getting the love he deserves from waifu. I think it's kind of funny how in an episode where Capella transforms into Priscilla, my favorite part of the episode is two shirtless men fighting each other. Without further ado, let's discuss this episode. The episode starts out with Garfiel in his tiger form ripping apart the massive blood clot that fell on him. As he's confronted by a bunch of demi-beasts, Garfiel gets flashbacks to Elsa. He doubts himself and is conflicted by killing someone who never bore a grudge against him, right before Kurgan easily dispatches of the demi-beast. Seeing Garfiel as doubt, Kurgan puts his blades behind his back, not seeing Garfiel as a worthy opponent. Garfiel attacks Kurgan and attempts to finish him off with raw power, but Kurgan skillfully uses his additional appendages to defeat Garfiel before throwing him onto the ground through the pavement. Right before we cut to the battle against Gluttony, Otto tells the lie that when negotiating with merchants he needs to listen until the end, right before he starts off the fight by having some water dragons attack Lai. Otto's actions impress Felt, but she tells him she won't pry into how he controlled the water dragons, something he's thankful about. When Otto asks Felt what she's doing here, she tells him that she's here to recover a meteor given to them by their sorcerer. Otto asks Felt about its efficacy, to which she responds by saying that Old Man Rom said even Reinhard wouldn't come out unscathed if he was hit by it. It's a minor line of dialogue, but it's incredibly intriguing how and why a meteor so strong would be made. Right after Otto and Felt finish their conversation, a water dragon comes out of the hole badly injured, as they see that Lai had easily dispatched of the water dragons. Otto tells Felt to go retrieve the meteor while they hold off Lai. Everyone seems to be more motivated to fight, especially after hearing Subaru's speech, and maybe also after seeing Otto's Damas put some lizards against a fucking Archbishop. Lai tells Otto that now he's worthy of their plate, right before attacking Gaston. The flow method is a technique used by fighters to reinforce their bodies with mana, increasing their physical abilities. Think of it like armament hockey or cursed energy reinforcement in Jujutsu Kaisen. After Gaston's failed counterattack, Lai mentions that there are 3 heroes we would like. It's interesting since we have no idea who this Rui is. I think she/they might be another glutton, as the gluttony's names in Japanese are Rai and Roy. It fit with the naming scheme and it fits with Japanese vowels. 3 gluttonies would also make sense since there are 3 great maw beasts. Roy Alfred for the serpent, with Alfred being a star in the Hydra constellation, and Batin Kaitos for the whale, Batin Kaitos coming from Arabic meaning belly of the sea monster. So a third would make sense representing the great rabbit. That aside, Otto mentions how he's gotten into more fights by now than the average grunt, and he wonders what kind of merchant he is now. Right after the gluttony fight, we return to a fight we haven't seen in 3 episodes, Elle versus Capella. Midway through the Capella fight, she transforms into Priscilla. When asked when she saw the princess, she responds by saying that she didn't need to see her. She could transform into the kind of woman Elle likes by seeing his behaviors and reactions. It seems that Capella is incredibly smart, especially by Archbishop standards, since the bishops we've seen so far don't seem like the sharpest tools in the shed. Right before she transformed into Priscilla, Capella accuses Elle of being behind all the suspicious events that happened in Priscilla, like the opening of the gate that prevented our heroes from getting squad wiped and the killing of the Council of 10, the only people who know where the witch's corpse is. Capella accuses Elle of playing dumb and then tries to flirt with him. Elle doesn't care about Capella's flirtatious remarks and he zestily rejects her. When Capella angrily asks what he doesn't like about her, he tries to tell Capella he doesn't like her or hate her, but then he corrects himself by saying that's a lie, calling Capella disgusting, and not like the archbishops he's interacted with. Following Elle's provocative remarks, Capella transforms her arms into wolf heads, yet despite her constant attacks, Elle constantly dodges them. He also uses Donna to defend himself from her, showing his proficiency in earth magic. As Elle continues dodging Capella's attacks, he goes behind her and manages to decapitate her. Right after decapitating her, he lodges his sword into her body right before using Eldona to blow her body into pieces. After he blows her body to pieces, Capella asks Elle why he didn't bother to dodge her blood when he knows what it did to Subaru and Krush, to which he replies that he has dodged her blood before but it didn't matter, confusing Capella as she never saw that happen. With Elle also being from Earth, his constant suspicious actions, and how he's managed to dodge plenty of Capella's attacks in advance, and Priscilla's remarks about fools, I think this is foreshadowing for him having a looping ability just like Subaru. But this is just my own theory, so tell me your theories in the comments below. That aside, Elle mentions how his stars were bad for meeting Capella. With the amount of star lore in ReZero, I guess I can say astrology bros are up now. Right after we see the Elle fight, we see that Garfiel had been knocked unconscious for a little while. When he wakes up, he sees Kurgan waiting for him to continue their fight. Right before we cut to exposition regarding who Kurgan is, Garfiel tells Subaru that demi-humans have a high affinity for magic, but the exception to that rule are the multi-armed tribe. And between the multi-armed tribe, Kurgan was an exception as he had 8 arms, way more than the average of 4 or 5. Despite being ostracized for his strange physique when a lord attempted to eradicate the multi-armed tribe, Kurgan took up arms for his people and eradicated the lord's soldiers, becoming a legend in flesh and Walakia's strongest warrior. It's interesting how much like Kurgan, Garfiel is an outcast amongst outcasts. Garfiel being 3/4 human means he doesn't have a place between either humans or demi-humans, so it makes sense that he'd battle another outcast among outcasts. Seeing that Kurgan hasn't unleashed all of his demon cleavers, Garfiel is enraged, seeing that Kurgan is still beating him like a kid. Garfiel attempts to use his divine protection to get the upper hand on Kurgan, but he continues to get beaten up by Kurgan. Right before Kurgan could choke him out, Garfiel used his divine protection to save himself, causing them both to fall into the water right before Garfiel gets thrown into a shelter. We're told in the novels that Garfiel was worried about fighting Kurgan underwater since Kurgan is an undead who doesn't need to breathe. Seeing Garfiel struggle to breathe underwater, Kurgan creates a hole and throws Garfiel into it to prevent him from dying from drowning. It's interesting how Kurgan, despite having multiple opportunities to take out Garfiel, didn't take these opportunities and decided to save Garfiel for their duel. When Garfiel sees himself in the shelter, he's confronted by his younger siblings. He notices that a demi-beast is inside the shelter with them. As it charges towards Garfiel, he continues to doubt himself, but to defend his younger siblings, Garfiel finally decides to attack the image of Elsa. It symbolizes him overcoming his trauma right before Kurgan enters the shelter. He closes the hole created by Garfiel right before confronting Garfiel. Garfiel's siblings begin chanting Gorgeous Tiger, which causes the rest of the crowd to chant for Garfiel, cheering him on as their protector. Garfiel apologizes to Kurgan for the ruckus, but he gets no response, or at least no verbal response, as when Kurgan sees the dead demi-beast, he unleashes all 4 of his demon cleavers, recognizing Garfiel as a warrior. Kurgan's recognition and the people's cheers motivate Garfiel. He says his name as the ultimate shield, Garfiel, before merging both that name and Gorgeous Tiger. Names hold an incredible significance in ReZero, and Garfiel's case is no different. His moment of self-actualization comes when he merges the name Garfiel Tinsel, the name of the boy who is afraid of the outside world so much he wants to protect, a boy constantly plagued by his own powerlessness, and the name Gorgeous Tiger, the name that carries the weight of being the strongest. After being confronted with his own weakness so many times in Pristella, Garfiel begins to wonder if he's gotten weaker as he's had more things he wants to protect. I think it's extremely cathartic to see Garfiel finally actualize himself after overcoming his fears and his own weakness. Following Kurgan's recognition, we cut to what's probably the greatest action sequence we've seen in the entirety of ReZero, and dare I say in the entirety of Isekai. Vincent Shanzard, the One Piece and Mahoraga fight legend, did an absolutely wonderful job for our boy. During the fight, we see that Garfiel used his divine protection to restrain Kurgan's arms right before he charges in at Kurgan. He gets his arms destroyed by Kurgan's attack, so he resorts to using his mouse to take out Kurgan. He bites out a chunk of Kurgan's neck, defeating him. Following Garfiel's absolute masterclass on the battlefield, Kurgan says just one thing: magnificent. I think it's incredible how just one word could be a cathartic conclusion to Garfiel's entire character arc in Season 3. Within this fight, Kurgan manages to say so much without having to say a single word. His unsaid dialogue is wonderful, and it adds so much to Garfield's character. You know that Garfiel is an incredibly well-read kid. He mentions Hoshin, Reed, and even Reinhardt. Seeing him overcome one of the heroes he's read about is a wonderful conclusion to his arc in Pristella, and the perfect answer to his question about his own strengths. Garfiel Tinsel truly is strong. Adaptation-wise, this episode contains easily the best cut of animation in any ReZero episode, bar none. Even Hiroyuki Tanaka's cuts in the Reinhardt vs Elsa and Julius vs Betelgeuse fights in Season 1 don't compare to Vincent Shanzard's cut during this episode. The amazing visuals aside, this episode does include a fairly large amount of cut content, and most of Garfield's inner monologues are cut. I'm mentioning this not to rag on the adaptation, but because it's important characterization that is being cut. Garfield's worries, his desperation, and his plan to defeat Kurgan are integral to the fight, and I think it's a massive shame that the anime doesn't even attempt to portray these scenes. While this episode is visually stunning, it's a shame that the narrative of the fight wasn't kept intact. It's why, as always, I'd suggest reading this fight in the novels as well as watching the anime. That aside, I do hope that Vincent Shanzard's work on ReZero attracts other big names in the industry to work on the series. Vincent's cut is pretty long at over a minute long, which is a level of creative freedom he didn't have on One Piece or Jujutsu Kaisen. So I hope this leniency makes him stick around for Arc 6, and maybe it could even attract other big names to later arc. While I definitely have my gripes with this episode, I think I have to give it its flowers in terms of direction and animation. As for this video, I've been trying to incorporate more jokes into my script, so I hope you give me your thoughts on that. So I hope you give me your thoughts on the more comedic approach in the comments. Like, comment, and subscribe if you like this video, and if you like my content, please follow me on Twitter and Instagram and TikTok, as I post content there occasionally. If you like the thumbnails, follow my friend Jolt on TikTok since he's helping out a lot. And again, please comment, like, and subscribe, and thanks for watching.